Hello.
There he is. Hey, Kev, how you doing?
Good. I actually had some computer issue. I think anything that could have went wrong. I've spent the last 30 minutes trying to figure out my computer issue and links and stuff, but I'm here. I'm here now.
Murphy's Law, man. This is the way it works, always.
Always.
Awesome, everyone. So I promised you to have an amazing session, and Kevin has been generous with his time. So before I introduce Kevin, let me kind of give you some background. Back in 2009, that's when we started doing webinars. And I literally remember I would sit in my office and we had an amazing director of sales, and he would walk in and he says, Khalid, can we do a webinar tomorrow? Sure, tomorrow. And we would send out an email, and I think our webinars would not have less than 200 people show up, for a 24-hour webinar. Fast forward 2022, I guess. We push the webinars and we do the email, and just nothing happens. Attendance is not that high and you don't generate business. So I think of webinars as a way to just kind of top of the funnel, just to create awareness. That was my thoughts on webinars. Then, was it in January of this? No, not in January. It was August of last year. I'm speaking at PubCon, Florida, and Kevin is there. And everybody's just kind of listening to him. He's talking about webinars and how he uses webinars to generate business and land these amazing clients. And I'm like, dude, you gotta share this, because most agencies don't know how to do this really well. I mean, most agencies struggle to get clients. If you ask them, and Robert Craven was with us just a little earlier, and he was talking about the challenges that agencies deal with. And one is, how can I get more clients, better clients? So I figured Kevin will be the best person to talk about this. So Kevin is he was the CEO of Rowe Digital, which is an enterprise SEO firm that's really builds scalable SEO programs for large websites, for enterprise clients, Fortune 100 companies, fast growing startups in the Silicon Valley, regular speaker. I mean, if you're in the digital space and if you hang out in the digital land, you probably have seen his webinars at Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land. Right now, he is building PureLink, which is really changing the game of how SEO is done. We're talking about, this is the big companies, kind of the large companies saying, okay, we want to get PureLink, because he built a system to help them really grow their traffic, grow their sales. Kevin, I know I didn't do justice to you as a matter of intro, but I really appreciate you jumping and sharing. Why don't you give us a little bit of background, and then we jump in.
Sure. So I've built over 8 businesses now, 2.5 that have been successful.
I like the 2.5.
2.5. And most of those in SEO. I built probably, I think, 3.5 companies, 3 companies in the search space in SEO. PureLink is one of those companies, enterprise link building solution. And right now I have Rowe Holdings, and Rowe Holdings, we're launching new technologies to really focus on how do we automate in the marketing space, right? Like, it's really my passion right now is focused on how we leverage technology to solve problems for marketers, you're right, and business and entrepreneurs, and not necessarily small entrepreneurs, but like larger companies, $50 million, $100 million plus. So my passion right now, yes, I have SEO companies. My passion right now is building businesses, right? And how do you do that? How do you build businesses fast from 0 to 50 million, 100 million? And where are those people? Right. And this is not something I'm, offering as a service. This is what I do for myself. So my passion right now is, how do I build $50, $100 million companies? And so a cornerstone of that is I think it's messaging. And one of the strongest tools to communicate that message is webinars, video right now, right? So talking, being a thought leader. I gave actually what I would think is a bad presentation yesterday. Mm-hmm. It was a webinar. It wasn't even that great. I wasn't really overly impressed with the presentation. A lot of people were. The reason is how I spoke about things. Like, right, it gave me the ability to demonstrate when people ask me questions is when I shine. I'm not necessarily always the best at communicating immediately, but when you start to engage with me is when you understand I actually know what I'm talking about. Obviously to a degree that we all know what we're talking about, but I know, and I can have a thoughtful conversation with an expert in the field, and hold my ground in these topics, right? Webinars are amazing for that. And I don't think people are leveraging them in the right way. We talked about this, right? Like it comes down to, for me, webinars is a cornerstone and on finding those big enterprise clients. Like they need to see you talk. They need to know you're an expert, or that your team is an expert, or that your solution is either the silver bullet, quote unquote, or solves their problem, or you would at the very least, solve their problem, whatever that might be. And I think, again, webinars for me are the best way to communicate that. And not just this, I think webinars also have a tendency for me to be something that's an easy way to get to the right audience as well. Like so a lot of these trade publications, I'm sure I do it with like SEJ and SEL for certain things I've done or used to do. But trade groups in general are where the audiences are, right? Going to the audience where they are and talking to them where they are is really what this comes down to. Webinars are just a tool to get there. I think the tactic I'm using to do all this is really just finding the audience where they are. I'm understanding the issues they're having, and I'm actually coming up and discussing solutions to problems that are big for them. That really comes down to it. Like I actually go into their issues. What are the issues, and how do those relate to my product, and what is that connection? That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to sell the product. I'm talking about coming up with the topical ideas. So I'll give you an example for PureLink. So with PureLink right now, we have pretty aggressive growth. One of the things we're doing a lot of webinars, and my relationships is also driving a big part of that growth. So we've had over 3,000% growth of PureLink. PureLink is now poised. We're taking it to 20 million next few years. So it's not a massive company, but it's a good growth trajectory. And so the path we're taking, leveraging webinars and for that, it really comes down to we're just going out there and finding the people, the audience that have these problems, a common problem, and we're solving it. It comes down to how you actually went about solving that problem and how you identify the problem and how you talk about that problem. It doesn't necessarily mean you're selling a product to solve that problem at the time, but everyone's out there trying to find solutions to the problems they're having on a day-to-day basis anyway. Why don't you just talk about those problems? Now, selecting it is a hard part, and the messaging is a little harder, but finding people that are looking to solve problems, that have the money to solve those problems, that you are solving those problems better than anybody else, or at least you've figured out how to solve those problems and they trust that you can solve that problem. Selling the product comes as a natural consequence of that. And I think webinars.
Let me ask you this, and let's drill a bit deeper. And as we're preparing for the session, it's sort of interesting because marketers always talk about the audience and the problems, but in all honesty, until I talk to you, and if you recall, kind of like, oh, you're a CRO guy. I'm like, yeah, okay. You're like, well, here's the problem because here's what the audience is dealing with, and I'm like, wow. We've been offering CRO solutions for 16 years, but I've never thought of it the way you put it. I was like, oh, wow, that just crystallized it in my mind for the first time after 16 years, which is sort of interesting. Let's talk about finding the audience, and then we'll talk about the problems.
Sure.
What specifically do you look for when you're looking for an audience? How do you go about the process? Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Selecting an audience to go after, I think comes along, selecting the audience and solving their problems, right? So finding an audience, first off, for me, it's like sticking to what I know. I'm not going to go over and start in healthcare tomorrow, right? I don't know it. I don't understand the industry. So stick to what you know. Warren Buffett does that. I do it. It's not a terrible idea. So stick to you're going to come up with and understand the industry better. You got to make sure you understand that industry first. So don't try to talk to an industry you don't know. Or if you do, there's a couple great books on how to get up to speed in a new industry or a new thing fast. specifically targeted towards new CEOs coming into new companies. But there's a couple books out there on that topic I highly recommend people find and learn about. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that would be great actually if you share
I'll
that.
have to remember which ones they are. It's probably on this shelf or this shelf.
It's somewhere there.
Yeah, it's one of these guys.
Yeah.
But so the audience, what I like to do is find somebody that has a built-in audience that you can market to. Trade groups are a great way to do this. Trade groups have built-in audiences that are ready to buy, or at least are in the buying mode at times, or at least they're trying to solve problems. People that are out there trying to solve the problem. Yes, you can go to Google and try to get people to rank in Google for that. And there's still a group of audience there as well, of people who are searching to solve that problem, right? But the trade groups, sometimes they don't even know they have the problem. And that's the trick, like you said. I didn't think of it that way. That's the solution you're looking for. In SEO, a lot of it is they've already solved the problem. They're just looking for those solutions, or they have identified it. Who hasn't identified the problems yet? It's sometimes they're problems, they just can't articulate it and synthesize it. That's why I push all of my teams to focus on issue identification. It's a great exercise. So issue identification, find the audiences with the issues, see if there's a big enough group of people with the same issue. And then I also like the SEO industry because, there actually hasn't been as much evolution in strategy, approach, and technologies for a long time. The reason is, I think, in this industry, there's a lack of technology creativity, meaning it's hard to do. It's really hard to be successful in SEO. And so people tend to avoid what's hard. I don't. I look for those hard industries. And that's because I know the people haven't thought about those problems. They haven't thought about it in a certain way or a certain perspective, that issue in a certain perspective, right? So there's new ways of looking at it. And most people are just afraid to solve the hard problems. So take those hard problems that people are looking to solve, and then discuss it, understand those problems. Is it big enough? Is it part of a bigger conversation, or is it a conversation that could be big, right? So again, in SEO, another example of this, finding the issues that nobody really think about. So link building, and what I'm doing right now for PureLink, at least, and other companies, actually, we just talked to a great product guy. We're talking about how do we scale up and automate fully, marketing activities, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, the audience, I guess what it comes down to is I actually really understand that audience, and I stick with it, but their problems, they didn't really define the problem in the link building space as what it is. And the problem, nobody really thought about it like this: impact, quality, and scale. And there are no link building solutions out there that cover those three things. Well, there isn't until PureLink came along. Those three things are actually three most important part of any link building campaign or any SEO or anybody buying. They haven't defined it. They never defined it like that, but that's what they were looking for: a high mixture of those three problems. Because people struggle to think about problems they have in a creative way and issues. We don't think about to really define the issue. We naturally as people just go to problems. Mm-hmm. But being good at identifying that issue, and for me, it was like finding those three things. I found a huge audience internationally that really just cared about those three things. Mm-hmm. So I think long-winded, but that's how I've gone through and found the audience. Again, trade groups, they already care. They already want to solve problems, and they're a captive group you can reach pretty easily, meaning through webinars maybe at times, or other pieces of content, and then finding their problems in that audience, but make sure you're strong in that vertical.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. So everybody reaches out to us, and this is after the conversation I've had with you. Everybody says, "Hey, I'm struggling with my conversion rate." Okay, it's just like, "Oh, I'm struggling with my SEO." What does that mean? Really, if you break it down, it's probably one of 15 to 20 possible problems. Yes, you have a low conversion rate, but really it's a result of one of those, a mixture of those 15, 20 problems. Mm-hmm. So nowadays, whenever somebody reaches out, I tell them, "Hey, I want you to fill out the survey and rate those problems." And it's interesting when you're talking to a CEO. We're talking to the CEO of the second largest insurance company. So he's the one who reached out, saw us on LinkedIn, says, "Hey, I'm interested. I just want to at least have a conversation." And I'm like, "Well, we don't have a conversation until you fill out the survey." And he's like, "This is unusual, but I'll fill it out. I'll play." And then he fills it out, and then we have the call. And he's like, you know what? I thought I had a conversion problem. This killed me filling out the survey, because it turns out I have like a ton of other problems that I need to solve. And the conversation at that point is really not about, oh, well, here's our solution, like you said, or our product or what we do. It's really about those problems, correct? It's a completely different shift and change in the mindset, where it's like, oh, actually, it's, and then that's one of the questions I asked. I'm like, well, how much is this problem? How much is this costing you? And he said, well, probably $40-50 million. Great. So my solution is going to fix that. And I'm not going to fix it overnight. I'm not going to come and fix a $40-50 million overnight. This is not even a 1 or 2 year. It's probably 3 to 4 years. But yeah, finding that right audience, finding the problem. And then you're looking for the trade. Is there for the trade group or an association, is there something that you evaluate when you're saying, okay, well, here is the group of people that I want to reach, when you're looking at different trade groups, or how do you do that?
Audience clustering is a big part of it for me. And then also, I like to build personas to the point where I can physically visualize that person. Like almost to the point where it's one person in front of me, right? Who I'm talking to. It's like, what kind of glasses, what are their major problems? Here's like, so I like to really understand the people, not the numbers, not the cluster in total, but like the people inside that cluster. Mm-hmm. What do they care about? And really understand them. That's going to be really important. I think you said, like, how do you select the trade group? You want to say select which trade group? I think, again, and it's not just that, it's what product you sell to which trade group. I think that's part of it. It's like that connection between the product that we were having a conversation about. Yeah. Right. So it's like, it's not necessary if you have a product already and you want to go out and find groups, right? So that's going to be more often than not the process a lot of the people who are listening here will take, right? If you already have an agency and a product, if you're coming up with a new product idea, you have the audience, build a product idea for that audience. Mm-hmm. But you want to reverse it. You already have the product. You want to go find that audience. Now I think that's what we're kind of talking about here is how do you select an audience for a pre-existing product? Yeah. And get it and sell it with webinars to scale it up, right? So if you're an agency, or you'll say you have I think key to agency, first off, you got to productize. So it's about finding that mix, the right product mix for the audience that you have. So product market fit. Right. I know it seems like a simple concept and stupid. People don't do it right. Product market fit and we've talked about, and like no agency people are thinking about it this way, or excuse me, there are a smaller group of agency people that think about it this way. The people who do think about it this way end up becoming product people. Mm-hmm. So they launch products. So Larry Kim, for example, right, had an agency and then now has launched 2 technology companies. But he made that transition to product. You got to be a product person, not an agency person. Stop thinking like an agency person. It's so hard to do. It is painful, almost like it hurts you, like your heart. Stop thinking like an agency executive and start thinking like a product person. So I'm a VP of product at PureLink. I'm not the CEO really. I am, but I'm a head of product. Mm-hmm. And that's my role. I'm not an agency guy anymore. I am, and then I do get brought in to consult on large projects, and because I enjoy it. I want to stay up to date on tactics, but think like a product person. So that product market fit and identifying what products you can bring to that audience. So let's take a look at there are also, I think this is really important, there are different type of trade groups, and sometimes they have very broad groups and then very narrow specific groups, which there's a smaller audience. You want to go to that narrow specific audience as much as possible. So not just hey, this is a group of marketers, right? You're going to look for a group of marketers talking about a certain thing. SEO groups, for example, for me, there's a lot of SEO groups out there that have SEO people and content marketers together, right? Mm-hmm. So in digital marketing and others, the e-commerce is another one for this right now. So e-com, the e-tail events and things like that. So if you're selling to e-commerce or you want to sell product to e-commerce people, you can go obviously find them there. A lot more expensive to get into. That's a caveat for everybody. It's freaking expensive to do this, by the way. I spent $100,000 this quarter or last quarter on it. So again, long-winded question, but I'll say that it's all about the product market fit for that audience, finding a niche audience, a niche trade group. And then, obviously they have to have the money to buy it. I prefer enterprise. So a lot of what I'm talking about right now is how do you get to that enterprise audience, not the small business audiences, the ones that are spending 50,000 a month, 100,000 a month. That's who we need to talk to.
One of the speakers later told me, it was funny because he was asking me, he's like, Khalid, did you ever work as a waiter in a restaurant? And I'm like, no. He said, well, I did. I'm like, okay. He said, well, which waiters have the worst job? And I'm like, no. He's like, the waiters that work at Denny's. I'm like, why? He said, well, because the customers are they're just demanding, correct? And the tips are very low. However, compare that to waiters who work at those high-end restaurants. The customers have much lower expectations and they tip you really, really well. He said, I've done that. I've learned that lesson, 30 years ago. And when I started my agency, I looked for those larger clients because they can actually pay the bill and they appreciate the work that you do. So he's like, that's the secret. And I'm like, okay. And that's the reason I'm like, Kevin, what you're talking about is landing those big clients because they appreciate the work, they can afford the service.
They have defined their problem better than the small business people too.
Oh, that's true.
They understand their problem better. So small business people are finding solutions. They're not great at identifying the solutions to the problem that they have.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the enterprise. I think it's a mentality. It's hard when you're a small business owner I'm very focused on solving that specific problem and identifying the issue. Most of them are like, oh, that's the issue. And you just go to the top level thought of what the issue is. And then all of a sudden you implement it and that actually doesn't solve your problem. I think that's when you get those clients that are, they're frustrated or they don't know how to get there. So you as an agency owner have to build, with smaller ones, I think that's part of it, like the product market fit. So if you're going after the smaller businesses, there's a market there for it, sure. But what is the product you're going to select for that market? Understand who they are, the small business people that a lot of us as agency owners, dread going after. The reason is we're not building the product that fits their needs and we're not communicating that to them. So I think it's our responsibility. I'm not saying that's not an audience to go for. That is an audience to go for. I'm saying the enterprise audience is another audience to go for. This is a typical dichotomy, which people think about in agency world is, hey, I don't want to work on those smaller accounts because of that. But it's I think the rationale here is that the larger companies are very good at identifying their issues and their problems and rolling out a roadmap to solve it. Smaller businesses are not. So you have to build that into your product if you're talking to that audience. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So
yes,
yeah, definitely. Found an audience, defined their problem, found a cluster where they hang out. What's after that? How do you put the webinar together? Talk to us about kind of of that process.
So now you got to obviously create the content for them. So you got to start to build up yourself as the person that understands that niche, right, very well, and the specific problem or the product for that niche. So that does take time to build yourself up into that audience. The reality is you could probably get there in a quarter if you're, in a couple of months through a series of presentations. Now you do have to build yourself up and build up your reputation before you hit this audience, of course. So it does take time. As you do webinars more and more often within the audience, that's when they'll start to see you, remember your name. They'll come back more and more, right? So it's not always a short game. Sometimes there is a long game, meaning 6 months to a year long game. But after they've heard you a few times, like you contributed to maybe the content section, been on some email blasts, then they start understanding who your company, what your company is. But again, it's that product market fit that's going to be really important. But let's assume you have the product market fit, you have a great product for the trade group people, and now you're trying to sell product to that audience.
Mm-hmm.
Really understand the features that you're working on and talk about those features. Now, for example, PureLink, quality, impact, and scale. So I talk a lot about quality and scale. I just gave a webinar about how we built 600 links in a single month with 2 people. Most people, that would take a year with 2 people. So it took us a month. So I talked about, I took that feature, what we had, and I talked about, now I didn't talk about our product, but I talked about, and I really thought about that problem and the various types of ways we solve that problem, quality or impact or scale. I talk about quality in 10 different ways. Right now, I am becoming known as, and my team is becoming known as people that understand quality when it comes to link building and SEO. And I think about the word, I'm thinking about the word quality. I'm redefining what quality means in this space, and people are listening to that. So keep in mind, don't just talk about your features or sell your features or things like that. What you're doing, the features and the benefits, or if you want to think about it that way, or the problems you're solving, you want to be known as the expert in those problems, not just your technology, because there's going to be a lot of different other solutions out there that work out solving what that problem is for them, or might solve pieces of it. You should understand very well all of those problems and even maybe write about it. And like, for example, I talk and I write about Ahrefs, which is a tool that solves link builders problems, SEO problems in link building. I associate myself with that technology in a way. I know that tool in and out. Well, I talk to people about how you find quality links in that, how to use it to identify quality. People, again, I'm not talking about my technology at all, my tool, or how we created this pure grade score and the scoring system and leverage AI. But now I'm even out there, I'm talking about how do we come up with an AI tool that automates quality score that's different than the metrics. This is a concept in quality and link building nobody's talking about, but I am. And the reason I am is I care, and it's truly a solution to a problem we haven't solved yet. But once we solve these problems, and once I know I'm going to eventually solve them with people, or I might influence other people to solve those problems, but everybody in the space knows I'm working towards solving those problems, and I want to talk about it more. And that has been a natural for me. It's just natural. Again, you got to have the right product market fit, have the right messaging. And like we talked about in CRO and giving presentations for CRO perspective, how do you identify what the actual problem is and then talk about that problem, in whatever, to whatever degree you want.
It's sort of interesting. So I'll give that example. So we speak at all the digital marketing conferences. You mentioned we speak there, but mostly they're SEO conferences, correct? And I was telling you, I'm like, well, from speaking, I can't, maybe there's only one client that we've landed really from speaking. And after talking to you, I'm like, well, yeah, okay, now I see the issue, because I'm talking to SEO guys and they're really not focused on the conversion issue, correct? They're thinking traffic, they're thinking links.
Well, they are, but they don't even know it's a problem they should be thinking about.
Exactly.
They haven't identified it yet,
yeah.
But they do think about it, but they just haven't thought about it.
And not only that, the one thing that's consistent, and it's funny because I've had so many friends in the SEO space, and the one question that they always ask me, and I never thought about this, but I've gotten asked that question hundreds of times. Khalid, we've created this piece of content, is driving so much traffic to to this particular website, but no conversion. And the client, the VP, is upset. What's going on? How can you help us? That's the problem, correct? Content that drives lots of visitors, but it's not converting. And you can't imagine.
And SEO, me as an SEO, has a problem that I'm not driving leads and sales with my content. Yeah. It's not converting. Yeah.
And that's, I'm like, oh, wow, that is the problem. Yes, we solved that problem, but I've never put it that way, correct? So instead of talking about how do we increase a website conversion rate? Well, no, how do you generate more sales from your content piece that's driving a ton of traffic? That's a lot more interesting to an SEO person, correct? Yeah. PPC person is a completely different angle. If I come to them with that, they're like, really? Content? I don't even deal with that. So again, understanding the audience, figuring out, okay, well, here's the problem that they actually are dealing with. And it's there. They may or may not recognize it. But the minute you say it, they're like, oh, wow, yes, that light bulb that comes on. I was like, yes, I have been dealing with this problem. So this is just kind of interesting. Let me ask you this. So we put the webinar, it's focused on the problems and how you solve those problems. I always get asked those questions when you put a webinar. Definitely, if you get business out of it, great. That's ultimately that's how we grow. how do you judge, away from the sales, and that might take a while, how do you judge whether the webinar was successful or not? Is it number of conversations you're having, number of attendees, number of leads? So let's talk, because people are attending and probably thinking about it, like, hey, I want to do that.
So I never just select one KPI. I know this is probably against what a lot of people think. I look at the holistic KPIs. Like I'm looking at lead metrics, lag metrics, everything for success. So for me, it's how many people did I get my message out to? Well, there's a lot. So like, did that message resonate with that person? Right. So yes, inevitably the lag metric is how many leads did I get and how many meetings did I get out of that meeting, and then did they turn into sales, and are they right size clients? Like, yes, I get that. I understand that, but I'm not necessarily overly worried about that. However, if I go a quarter and I present on 3 publications and I'm not getting any leads from it, something's wrong. Something is definitely wrong. So for example, I just walked away with 8 meetings at a webinar I gave yesterday that I did poorly at. And we have another 5 we're getting scheduled, just to give you an idea. And there was 125 attendees and 1,000 signups.
Yeah.
So that's the numbers where that was a success for me. So that's what you need to be looking at for a successful program. Yes, you're going to talk about your product a little bit in the webinars and things, but it's not going to be the purpose of the presentation. It's going to be informative and educational and solve a problem. But, I would say that first off, just making sure you're getting the attendees there is the only way you're going to get those type of leads. So look through your attendee list, making sure those attendees are the people you want to be talking to. It's easy. That's freaking easy. That's the easiest part of this. I love it. Now, of those people, what are the roles they got into, and are you talking to the right people? So for example, I don't work with agencies. Although I'm here talking to agencies, I don't get any business out of this. It's just, I like talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
So, if you're an agency, I do recommend you advertise in Search Engine Journal. Like if you're targeting SEO, you want to get SEO clients. So it's a great publication. They're a good group of people. They really are. I like everybody there. They're amazing. I'm hard to deal with when I'm doing my presentations too. I'm not responsive all the time to these guys, and they are great. Thank you, everybody there. So, but with that, I noticed there's a lot of agency people there. So yes, there were SEO people and content marketers, but we don't work with agencies. 50% of my leads were agencies coming out of one of those. So for me, is the all right audience there? It was SEO people, yes, but I don't deal with agencies, and it wasn't the right level of person on it. So I do like to look at that. Right country obviously is all part of it. So but the thing is, you can get 10. You only need to talk to 10 people to get a real good, business. You can generate $1 million in business with 10 clients, right? So that's what you're trying to find there. So even if it's a small number, I don't care, as long as that small number is really the people I want to talk to. Because I know if the people I want to talk to are there, they will, I just need to talk to 2 of them, and I've made our money back, or what might be. So, and then did they actually engage with it? So engagement's a big part of it, more so the conversion, right? So every analytics, for analytics, there's Google Analytics. If you're a Google Analytics person, you're looking at the audience, their behavior, and did they convert? That's your model for evaluation of, right? So I'm looking at that on these webinars too. Are they the right audience? How are they behaving and engaging with me and my content? Are they asking good questions? Are the people who are asking questions asking engaged questions or not? And as these questions they're answering, are they far off topic? So that, success to me, did I find the right piece of content to talk to the right audience there? Did I bring the right people in from that? If not, I'm going to tweak my message. I'm going to go after a new angle and try to find that audience again there. Or maybe a couple of them came, and then I need to talk to that small group, but there's hundreds of other ones that are like that small cluster of 2 or 3 people that did attend my webinar. Do they have more of those in the trade group, and can I find them? What message and what do they want to talk about? That's what it's about. I've done a lot. I've spent a lot of money learning how to talk to audience through webinars. So keep in mind that, again, conversion's a part of it, but I'm not really looking for conversions is the most important metric. I want who's coming, what's their behavior, and how are they engaging, and is there a large enough amount of people engaging with what I'm saying to care about it? And what do they say on those in the comments section, or when they're asking your questions, or even the poll questions? I love that. Poll questions are amazing. So like, are they being like, I've never thought about it that way? Like, what are they actually saying about these things? Like, I got somebody on my webinar yesterday that was like, I've never thought about that. I get so many people saying to me, I've never thought about it that way. I've never looked at the problem that way. I get it so much. And that to me says I'm going down the right path. Even if I didn't get leads, maybe the content's right and I need to switch and go to a new trade publication, right? So, or maybe I just need to, whatever it might be, just tweaking things to get you there. Long-winded answers are all
no. I like that. I think it's very insightful. Let me ask kind of last question, and then we'll open it up for the audience. We've talked about how to run the program successfully. We've talked about kind of understanding the audience, the problems, the actual running the webinars, the success metrics. Let's flip it completely. Talk about you run a webinar and it's not successful. It's like, okay, no engagement, no leads came through. I would say successful agencies or even products are a result of many mistakes along the way, and then you get to the success. What do you do if you run into that situation? What's your recommendation? Well, did you ever run into a situation like that, and what did you do?
Yeah, I did. I a lot, actually. I explained my whole history and how I got to where I was for it. Like, so you can do one of two things. You can tailor your messaging. Like for me and you have an audience in the SEO market, but you need to tailor your message towards that SEO audience, right? Or do you need to switch and go towards another group, right? So CRO for you, and what I would think, you need to go more towards the e-commerce people. And talking, maybe even the e-commerce people that talk, the new group of e-commerce people that are talking about and using informative content to push their product sales. Maybe it's just that group. So the well, I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that question? I just want to make sure I got
it. Failures are I was like, oh, I've done webinar, not successful, no leads, no interaction.
Yep. Okay.
And examples of that. Yeah. And
what do you do? So, again, there you might want to switch, but let's say, now you have to evaluate things like, did you target the right trade publication and the right audience? If you already have a product, is that product the right fit for that audience? CRO in the SEO community, let's talk about that briefly for a minute, just because that's where we are.
Yeah.
Do SEOs, and will they spend a shitload of money on conversion rate optimization? The reality is probably not, but can you build it? You can build an entire $20 million business off it. But there is a small niche market out there for that. I think, did you hit the audience right? If not, the audience isn't there, and your product market fit is number one. So if you don't have a product that's right fit for that audience, switch and go to a new audience. Mm-hmm. Or, if we're an agency, luckily, because this agency, you probably have 4 or 5 different products that you offer, services, SEO, PPC, maybe CRO, web development, whatever category it might be, social, obviously. So, let's say you're an agency that offers all those services, and you're going to talk to a group of, let's say, SEOs. We'll just keep using that example. I've talked to another agency owner who I met at a trade group. They were struggling to get leads from search engine SMX, and they were an agency that went to SMX, but they didn't define their product. They weren't talking about the audience as much. So it's like, is your messaging off is next? Mm-hmm. And so if you feel like the audience is there and you have your message, again, like in the SEO space, for me, I know talking to SEOs, me talking about conversion optimization for SEOs is actually an important topic. They will want to hear about that, but it's not a large enough audience. It's not going to be as big as the e-tail audience for e-commerce, but I'm going to get one large, bunch of large contracts out of that potentially for CRO. So, but again, it's product market fit's a part of it. Now you can tailor as an agency, you can tailor and come up with packaging that that reaches that audience. So sometimes your underlying technology maybe solves that problem, or maybe you're solving the problem for that audience in a different way than you were thinking about, so just really think about how you're solving the problem, or maybe the problems they have, your product solves it, but no one's defined what that problem is, right? I love coming back to that. So now you're going to tailor your product to the audience, right? So you might package it differently. One guy I told this digital marketing firm, talking to SMX, I was like, stop talking to them about general marketing. Some people care. There's a couple of people out there. Look at the people that were coming to that event, right? Yes, they did care, but you're just talking about doing marketing. They think they can do that themselves in-house. But what is the real problems they're having? Well, they were a competitor of ours, actually. They did digital PR. And I told them, well, why aren't you packaging up the digital PR package better? Why aren't you telling them about that? So they're coming to your booth and they're listening to you talk, and you're talking about these problems, everything. You're trying to fit all of it in there. But why don't you talk about digital PR? Because the SEO people right now are really worried about how to get natural links. But you're not your product actually does that and can do that for them. I created a new competitor, by the way, by doing this.
Yeah.
But whatever. Who cares? I love it. But so like, and then I basically showed him, for all these products, you're starting to sell the company here. Don't sell the company at this trade show. Sell that one product, and you're gonna he got a lot more business as a result of that. And again, like I did the same thing with my Natural Link product, and it was fairly successful as well. So, if it's not working, sometimes it's just the packaging, right? How do you package up the problems that you have, or the solutions that you have?
Awesome. It is sort of interesting. I see Jim joined and left. He's our next session, so he's getting ready to join. This has been very powerful. We got a couple of questions that I'd like to kind of go over. How do you reach the level of 200 attendees? Are you doing anything to get to that level of 200 attendees?
Messaging. My messaging is really strong. 200 was a small one. I've gotten up to 4,000 attendees, or excuse me, lists with over 1,500 attendees is probably my biggest one, I think, yet. That was a direct webinar so a lot of it is, you got to go through the audience that's already out there. And if the trade group is large enough and you have a message that's important, you're talking about a problem or a series of problems that's important enough to a largest group in that trade group, 100's a very small number. Depends on the vertical. If you're an agency and talking to small businesses or medium-sized businesses, 100 to 500 should be your target goal for a number of attendees.
And the reality of it, what most people don't recognize, yes, you start with a trade association, or you find a place where people hang out, correct? Not necessarily a trade association, maybe a publication that can give you access. That's probably the fastest way. But with that access also comes in money. You gotta pay to get to that access, correct? So you are gonna, you're gonna invest some money. I tell you what, one of the first webinars we did, and this is a long time ago, and actually we did 2 webinars where we landed clients, but it was basically access of other companies that had the audience. One of them is a large e-commerce platform, and they invited us to speak. And this is back in 2009, 2010. 200, 300 people showed up, and we got clients out of that. The other one was actually another publication. Not only did we get clients, but they end up actually publishing our book, and we got them as a client, and we got clients as well out of this. Simba's asking, enjoying the presentation, thoughts on webinar formats, and how often should you say a B2B brand hosts webinars?
Monthly. Well, I mean, how often depends on your sales cycle and your financial goals. So it should be a cornerstone, a partial cornerstone to you building your company. Like you can build an entire $20 million company off this process, easily. 10 million, 5 to 10 million, very easily. I think 20 million takes some work. Now, when it comes to format, there's so many formats. I don't know if I can say just one format, but to me, it's not always about the format as much as about the messaging. And if you have the messaging, these people will hunt you down to find you. Like you don't have to have that that button that converts me from here. They will find you if you're messaging strong enough. They went to my LinkedIn after this webinar. There was no links to my stuff. I just told them, they hunted me down on LinkedIn. They're going to my website. So if you're messaging there, they're going to hunt you down. And that's what you want. You want to be hunted. And then, B2B brands hosting webinars, again, monthly. But right now, I bulked up all of my webinars into Q1 because I know our sales cycle. I have very aggressive growth strategies for 2022. It's 2022, right?
Yeah, 22. Yes.
So I'm investing a lot of it in doing bulk webinars right now. But it also comes down to how many messages you have running concurrently. So if you can run 10 messages at the same time over a year, do as many as you can. So like if you're getting business out of it, who cares? And if you're scalable, you can do 5 webinars a month, but 1 a month, and it depends on how much business you can handle. I'm getting anywhere from 2 really good large contracts, 55,000 a month up to, or down to 2,000, so.
I love that. Yeah, it is sort of interesting because I as long as you have the capacity, I think marketing should continue. Not everybody's ready to buy, but it's just a process of getting people interested and sign up.
Yeah, I mean, we were even I stopped sales. We weren't accepting any new clients for 2 quarters. We grew too fast. So I took a whole quarter off from business, and but I still did webinars. I still did content. But I just didn't accept anybody during that time, and they wanted to talk to me. I wasn't accepting business, which is, for me, I think it's if you're turning people away, they want you more.
Oh, it's magical because we did not accept any new clients. I think my camera is acting up. Go figure. You do the conference and the camera acts out, but we didn't accept any clients last quarter, and now we're starting again. So. It does magic. So I'm gonna have to restart my camera again. I could swear I've had this camera now for 6 months. Never a problem. The day
External?
of the event, yeah, it's a Sony 6400.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second time I have to restart it today, so it makes for an interesting start. Virtual camera. Hopefully it communicates. Well, it's refusing to communicate. No, here we go. Yeah, it's funny. I'm just gonna kind of finish maybe with this last comments. Being a conversion guy. Always you get asked about the CTA and how many CTAs should you have on the page and how many. I tell them, don't do something silly where you don't have any CTA on the page. But guess what? You got the right messaging. People will find you. Don't worry about it. Just have the right messaging. Just like you said, by the way, do an amazing webinar and people will find you. They will actually look for you. Like lots of times people post on LinkedIn. We hang out on LinkedIn quite a bit. I'm like, you don't need to put the branding and people will find you. It's just they figure out like, oh, I like this. I'm going to follow this guy. I'm going to actually contact them, as opposed to like, oh, well, we have to have the right branding, the right messaging, the right CTA. I'm like, no, we're not about that. So awesome. With that, Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been wonderful. How can people find you? Where can they hunt you down and find you? There you go.
So that's a good question. LinkedIn right now is the only thing I'm really publishing on, besides my Facebook page. Roweholdings.co is my holdings company that I'm launching. I've launched actually, but I don't publish any content there. LinkedIn is the best case. So /IN/Kevin-Rowe. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, I do post a lot of information there. Obviously, PureLink is I'm not coming to market PureLink here or anything, but purelink.com, PureLink.com is our enterprise link building, my enterprise link building company. Awesome. And I am, so yeah, there's various ways, but LinkedIn, and then @_Kevin Rowe, ROWE is my Twitter handle. I don't publish a lot there. I may revive it. But right now, the content I'm really focused on is automation of launching and scaling products. So I'm a product guy through and through. How do we automate product sales? How do we automate launching a new product? How do we leverage AI and ML and automation in product launches and new technologies and CRO, or how do we leverage it, to automate the agency world? Right now, I'm automating my agency side of the business. So this is what I'm talking about a lot on the social right now.
Awesome, awesome. Kevin, thank you again. Really appreciate you jumping and then sharing your secret sauce. But again, by the way, here's the secret sauce. It's all about the execution, correct? It's 90% execution, but I think you've given us the map. So Jim is joining us as well. Kevin, thank you. Thank you. Jim, how are you doing?